everybody. This is the Broward Progressive Coalition and the Broward Young Black Progressives to our All Candidates Roundtable for Criminal Justice Reform. We have brought together candidates for state attorney, sheriff, clerk of courts, and Congress to share among themselves and the viewing audience their visions for a fair and equitable justice system, what role each office has in that vision, and how they might work together to accomplish common goals. We will split up the candidates into 2 teams of 4 with 1 candidate from each office. We will ask the same question of both teams. While team 1 is answering the question spontaneously, team 2 will go to a breakout room for private discussion. After 10 minutes, team 2 will return to answer the question for the audience, and teams will take turns going first. Now, while we can't really dictate what our candidates do in the breakout room, we are hoping that they will spend the time discussing the questions and finding solutions to the problems. And just to keep it fresh, we're going to switch 1 candidate out at the end of each round so that everyone has a chance to work with each other. In addition to the possibility of finding a way towards reform, it is our assertion that providing space for dialogue, we can learn a lot about a candidate's aptitude for the office they are seeking. Do they interact well with their peers, listen with empathy, disagree respectfully, contribute meaningfully, articulate spontaneously, encourage others, follow directions, and work well in a team? We are hoping that over the course of the evening, the natural leaders will shine through. Jonathan will be monitoring the chat room, so if you have any questions or content suggestions, please direct them to Jonathan Harrington in the comment section on Facebook. Carolina will be keeping time and monitoring any chat or questions from the panel of candidates. So candidates, please keep your eye on Carolina while you're speaking and direct any questions to her. And now I will introduce to you our special guest moderator who will take it the rest of the way. Mona Lisa Weber, founder of Probation Station and former probation officer, was introduced to the criminal justice system after receiving a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice from Florida Atlantic University. During her years with the Department of Corrections, she managed caseloads of up to 130 felony offenders and mental health cases. Her civic duties included court appearances, interviews, field assignments, home inspections, and visits to rehabilitation programs and places of employment. Mona Lisa also served as a senior in-court probation officer, working alongside Broward County felony judges. In this capacity, she served hundreds of Broward citizens, advising them on the terms and conditions of supervision, house arrest, drug offender probation, prison splits, negotiating probation pleas, providing testimony, and making recommendations to state prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys. Now an educator, mentor, host, and community activist, it is Mona Lisa's wish to give everyone who enters the criminal justice system a voice by teaching them how to communicate first with them for themselves and then with others. It is my privilege to introduce to you tonight its guest moderator and my friend, Mona Lisa Weber.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor. I appreciate the invite and sharing space with all of you. Hello, candidates, welcome. I am truly excited this evening to ask questions and really get a lot of feedback because people are really asking questions and want to know what's actually going on. So we're going to start off tonight with an introduction by the candidates. You each will have 2 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are the best person for the job. Please keep an eye on Carolina. She will flash the 30-second warning for you to wrap it up, and then the time's up for you to stop, okay? We'll go in alphabetical order. Okay, I was just making sure Mr. Paul Backman was here. Beginning with Mr. Paul Backman, candidate for clerk of courts. Take it away, Mr. Backman.
That works. My name is Paul Backman. I am a candidate running for clerk of courts. I'm coming out of retirement in order to do this. Anyone that knows anything about the clerk's office knows that it is presently an absolute disaster waiting for another place to happen. The entire office needs to be restructured and given a new direction. After 34 years on the bench, interacting with the clerk's office, I believe that I have the insight, the innovative ability, the creativity, and the leadership in order to steer this office into the 3rd decade of this century. We are still not.
The message is received from PC Carolina.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
in California. That's okay. And I'm getting there. office still is not a paperless system, which should have been done well over 20 years ago. It needs the innovation gotten to a point where, like we're doing today, I think the clerk's office can be one that's virtual, so that John Q. citizen doesn't need to come down to the courthouse, find parking, pay for parking, and only be told that they have to come back on another day. I have administrative experience from being the administrative judge of the criminal divisions, instituting brand new programs which were designed to bring the jail cap down so the county didn't have to pay $1,000 a day for overcrowding, brought the overall case count down by half during my entire term, leaving it to my successor to continue on, and somehow it kept going up. Been involved in the community, and I'm going to guess my 2 minutes.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Sheila?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Sheila Cherfilus McCormick, and I'm running for District 20, which encompasses Broward and Palm Beach County. I'm a mother, a wife, a lawyer, a healthcare executive. For the last 10 years, I have lobbied and walked the halls of Congress, pretty much demanding that healthcare inequality come to an end. For the last 20 years, I've pretty much have been fighting healthcare inequality and have been in Medicaid, Medicare, making sure that our community gets the healthcare they need. And I decided to run in 2018 because I saw that Congress was not moving and they were not willing to even bring it to the floor when we talked about healthcare disparities or inequalities. And also I noticed that economic development wasn't present for our community and that we were being sidelines when it came to any issues that were coming up for us. So that's when I first ran for Congress in 2018. We only had 3 months and $30,000, and we came close to having 30% of the votes. But after that, I just continued to keep running and keep fighting. But this time around, it was a little bit more aggressive. We were been putting forth an aggressive campaign, and with COVID-19, I couldn't sit by the sidelines and watch our community be ravished. So we've been doing multiple programs, including helping business owners receive their paycheck protection loans and grants. We've been feeding families, and we have been out there making sure that people have access to healthcare. But what really differentiates me from the incumbent is that after 27 years, we pretty much had the same things where we find that seniors are, 1 in 7 seniors are living in poverty. Our children, the suicide rate is climbing, and there has been nothing really there. So it's time for Floridians to have a champion that can go the distance with fresh ideas and who knows the playing field and how to get it done. I've written policy, I have talked to different congressmen, senators, and I've been fighting the last 10 years. So it's time for us to go the distance now and make sure that we have representation, that we're counted, and that we actually have real change. South Florida can no longer be left behind. Thank you so much, Carolina, and I see your sign.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Willie, Mr. Willie Jones.
Okay, hi, my name is Willie Jones. I'm running for sheriff of Broward County. I'm running because I have a passion about public safety in the community. I have devoted 40 years of my professional life. That represents 62% of my life. I'm running because over the 40 years, I have witnessed the static way of policing that has been providing service to our collective community. Over those 40 years, I've witnessed firsthand the blindfold of Lady Justice being slowly lifted to the point where it's now completely lifted to the favor or the rhetoric of special interests, special money, special groups. This is why I decided to run for this very same office in 2016 to challenge the status quo. That's why I've run for this, because we need to put status, fairness, and equality back into our policing. We need to hold everybody accountable that wears the badge, carry the gun, and provide service to the people of Broward County. And let's get down to the bottom line. Let's cut to the chase. The bottom line is we need to embrace new techniques, values, as outlined in the well thought out 21st century best practice policing paperwork that was introduced by President Obama and his task force. I'm here to protect and serve, to bring back what's really, truly that is needed, safety to the people of Broward County. For those reasons, I'm running and I'm asking for your support.
Thank you, Willie. We appreciate you. SaKinah.
Hi,
How are
everyone.
you?
My name is SaKinah Latolah. I am 25 years old, and I'm a candidate for the United States House of Representatives in Florida's 24th Congressional District, which is Broward and Miami. It's a tiny part of Hollywood, and then it's going to be the heart of Black Miami, North Miami, Miami Gardens, Opa-locka, Liberty City, Overtown, Little Haiti. I'm the best candidate in this race because I'm the only one with a vision of what it's actually going to take to redefine and recreate our injustice system to one of equality and equity, not, and justice. I learned last night at an NAACP town hall that I'm the only candidate in my race that fully supports the movement to defund the police and reinvest that money in our communities. I also believe we need to decriminalize sex work. Not only is this extremely important, but it also, makes it harder to prosecute and solve human trafficking when you have women and victims being prosecuted and being jailed instead of getting help. We also need to end the for-profit prison system. We need to end the slavery within our prisons, the school-to-prison pipelines, get police out of our schools. When you look at who's being arrested, it's women who are victims of domestic violence. It's Black and brown bodies. In Miami-Dade County right now, they're trying to spend $400 million to build a new jail. But yet I've been in Overtown scrubbing porta potties, just trying to give the people stuck on the streets a little bit of dignity. So we are just completely backwards right now, and there's no room for compromise. We need to end cash bail, abolish private prisons, and really, really, really just reevaluate what we consider justice and equity in our country. And we need to legalize marijuana at the federal level, expunge past convictions, and get everyone out of jail. Because if we wait for Florida to do it, it's never going to happen, and we're just going to keep dying. So thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited to win on August 18th. And thanks for tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Sarahnell, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So my name is Sarahnell Murphy, and I've had the privilege of serving our community for the past 24 years as an assistant state attorney. I came to this community to follow your path, actually, Mona Lisa. I graduated from the University of Florida and was given an opportunity to go through the academy. I wasn't sure whether I was going to go law enforcement or Department of Corrections, but I ended up starting here as a felony probation officer in town, and I did all those tasks that were rattled off in your resume as well. And it was sitting in the courtrooms, as you have done as an in-court, watching the process that I realized and found my passion to become a prosecutor, where I felt I could really, really make a difference. So I really went to law school for the job. I'm a trial lawyer. I've tried over 130 cases to verdict, ranging from misdemeanors to murder. I've served as the chief of our domestic violence unit, as well as the chief of our misdemeanor trial unit, and I'm really proud of the innovative diversionary programs that I created in both those positions. I'm also proud of my trial success to keep Broward County safe. I think that right now, in the times we're living in, it's important to know a little bit about the person, because I think that our personal relationships and our life experiences shape how we interact and react and our empathy for people. That said, I'm a Florida native and a lifelong Democrat. I went to public school, and as an adopted child, my mother truly shaped a lot of my philosophies and beliefs. My mom was a passionate Democrat who believed in social justice and progressive ideas. Some of my earliest memories were my mom's fight for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment and the NOW meetings that went on in my living room. For those of you that are under the age of 25, the National Organization of Women, as they went by then, was an interesting experience for me, and really my passion for fairness and my full appreciation on the power and diversity comes from my mom. I'm also a wife. I've been married for 22 years. I got 2 little girls, 7 and 11 yesterday, which is hard for me to believe. I've been the caregiver to my dad for the past 16 years. He's a World War II vet. Lost his vision to glaucoma, so he had lived with us. And unfortunately, I lost him on April the 1st. But he too had a great influence on me in shaping who I am today. I believe firmly.
Thank you, Sarahnell.
Thank you.
And my condolences to you.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
Hi. First, I want to thank Jamie for being the first and so far only Democratic Club and Caucus to even acknowledge that there is a race in my district. So thank you for that. Kudos. And for the rest of you that have been doing lots of forums, I will say one of the benefits of being ghosted is I don't have to do them that often. But I am very happy to be here. So my name is Jen Perelman, and I have been living with the same congressional representative for 16 years. Over the years, I have noticed as my representative has taken more and more money from corporate and special interests that are particularly nefarious to our interests as a collective. Our current representative does not represent the majority of people. 72% of the American people want Medicare for all. Our representative wouldn't even bother to take a meeting to discuss this. So what we have right now is somebody that, while is collecting a paycheck from us, is also collecting paychecks from other people in the form of whatever. And so what she's not doing is representing us. Meanwhile, she's got great health insurance and the rest of us are fighting for scraps. So essentially, our campaign is one that views congressional representation as a term of service and not a career. So to us, since we started this campaign, we've been running a service-based campaign, essentially showing this district what that is supposed to look like. So Gen Core has been doing everything from food distributions, veterans, nursing homes, park cleanups, anything that we could do. Obviously, pre-COVID, this was infinitely easier. But we really view this as a term of service. And as far as my background is journalism, marketing, and law. I actually went to law school with the idea of being a lobbyist for nonprofit. I wanted to lobby for something like the Innocence Project. I had, thoughts of that. And I came out of law school and I ended up doing criminal defense for a little bit. This was in Texas. So what I know the most is criminal justice in terms of my personal experience, in terms of the issues. So our top 3 campaign issues are Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and criminal justice reform, which includes taking the profit motive out of corrections. So to us, profit motive ought not be in corrections, public education, or healthcare. So that is really the gist of most of our policies. And obviously to me, criminal justice is just a personal thing. But anyway, I hope to represent this district for people that want things such as a living wage, healthcare, and clean water. And those are things we're working on. So anyway, I'm Jen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate you. Al.
Doing great. Good evening, and thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Al Pollack, and I grew up in Miami. And upon graduating from high school, I joined the Marine Corps, honorable discharge. Returned home, listened to people in my community complain about not having enough minority law enforcement officer. That's what drew me into the criminal justice system. I decided to be a part of the solution and not the problem. Joined the Broward Sheriff's Office, graduated from Barry University. Upon that, I worked my way from road patrol all the way through the ranks of colonel. I retired in 2017. Decided after seeing what happened in our community, we had 2 tragic incidents happen. We had a temporary person that was appointed and the agency was still failing. I decided that Broward County deserved better. I've been a part of this community for more than 35 years and in law enforcement for more than 35 years. So that's what got me out of the retirement to come back to make that difference. The Broward Sheriff's Office touches the lives of everyone in our county. The spectrum of services and support provided by BSO affects our schools, our neighborhoods, our legal system, airports, seaport, and healthcare services, and other aspects of our society. Anytime that we have young ladies in our custody that are delivering a baby in our facility, that's a problem. That to me is so inhumane. And these things should not be happening in the 21st century. And it all goes back to a lack of leadership from the top. BSO is broken. BSO has problems, but BSO can be repaired with the right leadership. And I have the vision, the experience, the knowledge to take BSO to the next level. Thank you so
Thank
very
you,
much.
Al. And I appreciate you mentioning Miss Tammy Jackson because she lives in the neighborhood I work in. So,
Thank you.
And last but not least, Josh.
Hey everybody, how are you?
Joshua. Doing well, thank you.
Josh
Josh is good. Okay, I just want to make sure.
You know, you get Joshy. My grandmother used to call me that, but I haven't heard that in a while. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joshua Rydell. I'm a candidate for Broward County State Attorney. I'll go through my labels real quick, but I don't think labels define you. I'm a trial attorney. I'm a criminal defense attorney for 15 years. I'm a former public defender. I'm an elected official in the city of Coconut Creek. I got elected at the age of 33 in 2015 to the Coconut Creek City Commission. I've served as the city's mayor and vice mayor. I'm a father of 2 little girls. I'm a husband to my wife for a little over 10 years. We had our 10-year anniversary on a beach in our backyard during a pandemic. So that was exciting. But really what I am is I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate and I'm a leader. Aside from my passion, which is criminal justice, which led me to this race. When I got involved in civic government, I engaged in regional issues, environmental issues, which are very important to me. Fighting the expansion of landfills, very important to me. The expansion of the turnpike, preservation of the Everglades. These were municipal issues I worked on, transportation issues. But my heart and soul has always been in criminal justice. And we have an opportunity in this history right now to change how we do business in criminal justice. I think that society calling for a change, and we're calling for a change that, you know, punishment is the easy part, but fixing crime is the hard part. And a focus of what I am trying to do in this race and why I'm running is to not just punish crime, but to figure out how to fix it, to bring all stakeholders together and try to engage in forward-thinking concepts like restorative justice programs that can be much more widespread in the state attorney's office. We're looking at diversionary programs to be expanded, mentorship programs, and going out and aggressively seeking funding to do these things. Because the sheriff's department, the state attorneys, the public defender's office, we all need to work together much better than we ever have been before. And I'm looking at both sheriff candidates shake their head. We have to. It's a calling if we're going to successfully move forward in this county. And anyone watching, I truly would appreciate your support. I'm an open book. I welcome the opportunity to talk to anybody, and please finish as I read the sign. Thank you. And you know what? There's another first right now. I have never been shown a sign, which I've been wondering all this time why no one shows signs. So thank you for showing the time sign.
Love it. Thank you, Josh. We appreciate you. All righty, so now what we're gonna do is you will each have 1.5 minutes to answer the question, and then an additional minute for follow-up comments if you are so inclined. I will have the discretion to allow you to speak a little longer, you know, if I'm feeling you, you know. I can cut you off too if you're speaking over time, so just be mindful, right? Also, just given my experience, I can kind of call on, you know, the BS and stuff. So just like the people really want to know who you guys are. The people really want to understand what type of changes you're going to make. So be clear, be specific, so we, the people, can actually understand what it is that, what your vision looks like. So let's get started. So question number 1. At what part of the criminal justice process do you see the most injustice, dysfunction, or incompetence? What do you see as the biggest hurdle to reform, and how will you use your platform to fix it? Let's start with candidate for sheriff.
Okay.
Willie.
How you doing?
Good.
The most dysfunction in the criminal justice, I believe, because everybody else on the panel is secondary. They follow by the attorneys, state attorney, public defenders. You follow behind us. So we must change how we hire people that's going to serve our people in the community, and we must rebuild the trust. We must become legitimate to the people that we are working for. And the thing is.
So Willie, real quick, you said dysfunction. What is the dysfunction that you mentioned?
The dysfunction is the police officers we're working with and hiring.
Okay, got it.
Are being trained from the 20th century modalities, practices, and methodology. We need to bring those officers to the 21st century. And the 21st century clearly states community involvement. It clearly states respecting people where they are, civil rights, human rights, civil rights. We must get police officers to understand that they are protectors and not oppressors. They do not come in to occupy our community. They come into the community to serve the community. And because the 21st century says the citizens bow down to police because police tell them what to do.
Okay.
21st century says it's the other way around. We serve the community.
Thank you, Willie. I'll go around. Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm good. So I thought about this question now because I had an extra minute thanks to Willie. But so to me, the key part of the problem is the profit motive to the system. So it's the problem that encompasses the whole system, which is that we have currently for-profit incarceration and we actually have for-profit policing. We have a for-profit industry. There are people that profit off of how we police and who we incarcerate. And so that affects every single level of the criminal justice system. Now, at a federal level, my idea is we need to abolish for-profit detention. We need to abolish anything having to do with a profit motive in the corrections industry. But the other issue is what you can do at the federal level is you sort of dangle funds, sticks and carrots. So if local law enforcement wants federal funds, then they need to comply with A, B, and C, what are our standards. They need to know that if they want to take federal money, this is how it's going to be. Because really, other than that, it's really a state issue in terms of what we're talking about. But if they're not going to comply with, let's say there's a national registry of officers that have been involved in human rights violations. And then let's say that the federal government says, okay, local law enforcement, you want to hire those people, that's fine, but you're no longer getting federal funds if you're hiring people off of that registry. So I think from the federal perspective, the way you handle it is you get rid of the profit motive and you incentivize the behavior you want financially. And that's it. That's all I had to say. Look at that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Paul?
You know, that's a great question. And I don't say that facetiously or flippantly. I think the frustration and the dysfunction in the system is at all levels. One of the things that we don't do is we don't talk to each other. We have a system where we have the police that do the arrests. We have the state who prosecutes, the public defender's office who defends, you have the judicial system and the clerks. And somebody might say, well, why would the clerk be involved in the criminal justice system? It's one system. I believe the clerk's office is that cog around which the whole system functions because of the paperwork and the support that they give at every level. My thought, honestly, is we need individuals in these constitutional offices that know each other, can work with each other. We don't have to agree with each other, but the problems at every single level, if we come together, the entire judicial system can work and change. This is a very unique year. You are going to have all brand new constitutional offices. So it's an opportunity to start over, in a sense, as opposed to going with those practices that have been in fashion for more years than we can count. Reform can come, but it has to be a systemic change. And
thank you, Paul.
How come my time always seems less?
No, you good. Josh.
All right, we'll just start at a root of a dysfunction in what I believe the criminal justice system is. And the dysfunction, I believe it is on all levels, and it's a conviction-based system. So we have a flawed system in general how we do things, and it's by being a conviction-based system, not a solution-based system. And what do I say when I mean that? We have people, and what ends up happening, and listen, I'm in the trenches. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly every day in the Broward County Courthouse. Every day I'm there. Well, I haven't been there since March 15th, but every other day for the past 15 years prior to that, I've been there. And what do you see? You see a component and a cog and a machine that sets to convict people, that sets to put people on probation, that is not necessarily cognizant of safety and is in no way cognizant of really trying to fix things. So the easy part, what works is the punishment of violent, serious crimes. That works. But what doesn't work is nonviolent, low-level offenders that need help. And we need a state attorney to be on the front lines calling for help and calling for community involvement in that help. We need to tie in with our law enforcement partners. And with all due respect to the sheriff only patrols less than 40% of this county. They got the airport and the seaport, but there's the biggest cities have their own municipal police departments, and they're never invited to the table. That needs to be corrected immediately. So, you know, Paul, Willie, you guys are right. We need to talk more, but what we need to do is be solution-based. And it goes back to a simple thing of we need to fix crime, not just punish it.
Appreciate it. I guess I'll go to that second question, Josh. What do you see as the biggest hurdle to reform, and how will you use your platform to fix it?
I mean, listen, the biggest hurdle to any sort of reform is the institutionalization of what we have going on right now. Right now, I'm being criticized, me personally, because I'm an elected official, or I'm, you know, some call me a politician. Listen, I'm not. I'm a regular guy that works on a paycheck, and I see Willie Jones in Publix every day because he lives in my city. And I'm a regular guy trying to make a change. The hardest impediment to change is the institutionalization of what Broward County is. And that's overcoming decade-long hurdles to change a system. So that's going to be the impediment of changing how people think.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or anything of that nature as it relates to the biggest hurdle?
I'll speak.
Okay.
I'm going to take other time. I think what Josh just said merits consideration. I think it's a reflection of what Willie said, what I said, and how I think this has to go. The biggest hurdle is getting past the way we used to do business. If you look at COVID and where we are, we never thought we'd be doing business and having discussions over a forum on Zoom or any other thing of that nature. It's time for all of us to move together. Josh says one thing, that we are an adversarial system, and it will always be an adversarial system. But that doesn't mean we can't
Thank
change
you, Paul.
things. You're welcome.
Welcome back, everybody.
I think Willie wanted to speak.
Yes, Willie, go ahead. I just wanted to welcome everyone back, though. Go ahead, Willie.
You said the question was, what's the biggest obstacle? The biggest obstacle.
The biggest hurdle to reform.
Well, the biggest hurdle
to reform.
To reform is dealing with the labor unions and the old way of doing business. The old way of doing business, as Paul said and Josh said, is that we punish people. We go out and just arrest it. The old system is from 1980, the broken window syndrome. It's when we arrest people for minor crimes, for being homeless, for being drunk, for trespassing. And we need to change that to come to the 21st century, as the task force, Obama's task force stated. We must change how we police our communities. I see you, Carolina.
Thank you, Willie. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only person here that's not really involved in the state level in terms of law enforcement. And so it's a little bit different. But so from my angle, the biggest impediment is that we have corporate interests that have completely infiltrated our representation. So our representatives it is not in their interest to reform these things because it's not in the interest of their donors. So I'm just at a slightly different level than, the hands-on in terms of local law enforcement. But so to me, that's my biggest barrier.
You good? We need to hear from everybody. We got to connect everybody. So welcome back again. We appreciate your participation. I truly enjoy sharing space with people, and I'm just honored. So those that were in the breakout room, we want to hear your thoughts. Can we start with Ms. Sarahnell on the conversation you guys had behind the scenes and your thoughts?
Sure. So it was my pleasure to be back there and nice to speak with everyone. And I think, we talked, Al and I have shared that most common space. So we talked a little bit about the issue with the homeless and the fact that they really don't belong in our jails, but how best to get them services. We talked about the formation of this new community court program and how it's able to get services to these folks by bringing all the stakeholders into that same space. The problem is funding, as is the problem with everything. I tried to touch base, and then we kind of ran out of time with Al about his thoughts on civil citation. That's not a dialogue I've had with him. It's a dialogue I'm passionate about because I feel that I know the problems with the program. I know that it was intended to benefit the Black and brown people who are clearly arrested at a much higher rate for de minimis misdemeanors in cannabis than their white peers. So it's not working that way. I wanted more dialogue, but we ran out of time. What I wanted to talk to him about was my philosophy that the main problem with civil citation is not implementing guidelines for law enforcement to use across the board. Can't leave that to officer discretion. It ain't working. And as a stakeholder for the state attorney's office, when I went and talked with the commission, I asked, and they did their own thing, and their heart was in the right place, but it's not working. So when I reviewed the data for that program, and I realized that the folks in Lauderhill and Lauderdale Lakes and certain areas of Fort Lauderdale were still getting arrested, I pushed to expand our diversionary program to allow individuals free opportunities in that program. So that was my way to sort of level it out.
Gotcha. Al?
We had a great discussion. Some of the things that I touched on, when people enter into the system, it all starts with the law enforcement aspect of it. And I think that we're arresting people for misdemeanor crimes that should not even be there. Open containers, people loitering in front of a store, just hanging out, after they get off from work, small amounts of marijuana. These things, people should be issued citations if there's a problem, but they should not be arrested. We're spending a lot of money that we can take those resources and put them back into our community for some of the programs that Ms. Murphy just discussed. Just, such as the program that the city of Fort Lauderdale is currently doing. BSO is one of the largest agencies in the county that represents about 15 cities. They should be putting the bulk of the money in because most of the people are coming from the Broward Sheriff's Office. So we really got to take a hard look at that. And one of the best things to do moving forward is the four entities, the state attorney, the public defender, the clerk, and the sheriff's office. They have to be married together. They have to come together and communicate. That's where the change is about. That's what I believe. When those four entities come together, that's one. That's a powerful force.
Okay, thank you. Sheila?
Yes. We were talking about the biggest impediment because I believe we thought that was the
right.
question.
So it was the injustice, dysfunction, incompetence, or the biggest hurdle to reform, maybe from your position.
Okay, so I think the biggest hurdle to reform in my position, we actually talked about some of the racial issues that exist right now. We're in the middle of a big revolution, if you want to call it, or movement. And from a congressional standpoint, what I've seen even working with people in Congress is their failure to admit that Black and brown are systematically targeted and falsely imprisoned and brutalized. There's a lot of people who don't want to admit it, who don't want to have the conversation. And we have to start there. Congress passed the First Step Act, which was part of criminal reform, but we have to go further and address those issues, along with mental health issues that we have, where we don't have enough people giving those social services, but then we have police officers who are actually injecting them if they believe that they actually have a mental health or a cycling. These kind of things should not be existing in our criminal justice system. And then we talked briefly about recidivism and how there've been many studies done where we saw that the length of time that you're in jail doesn't equate to less recidivism. So why are we putting people in jail for so long when we know that there is a disproportionate amount of people who are being targeted? So if you ask me what I think the biggest hurdle is, it's going to be our failure to address racial injustice. It's going to be our failure to incorporate healthcare and mental health and social resources. And it's going to be, just the inability for us to work all together, because I can pass policies once I'm in Congress from the top down, but we need to be working together with the police officers, with the state attorney's office, and we can't be afraid to have those real conversation of how we're treating people in America. Is it equal, and if we're falsely imprisoning them?
Thank you, Sheila. SaKinah?
Hi, yes. So
Hi.
just to piggyback off of everything they said, I agree. I think the biggest hurdle is money. Biggest hurdle with any policy, Medicare for all, addressing climate change is always money. And I think we're talking a lot about the our criminal justice system and not enough about the poverty implications of our criminal justice system. So I kind of want to stick there. It's race and poverty issue. We talked a lot about the homeless, and I actually believe that I agree that the issue with criminal justice system really starts at the first interaction with law enforcement. One of my biggest things that I'm not going to back down on is I believe we need a national Pottinger agreement. I believe we need a national Bill of Human Rights for the even referring to them as homeless. It's a lot about how we look at people. My opponent, we were talking about public housing. She brought up, Congressman Wilson brought up parents on child support, fathers on child support. So that's how we automatically view people who are poorer than us as less prime, less proper. So the Pottinger Agreement used to exist in Miami-Dade County. It was protection for homeless, so they couldn't be arrested for an open container or sleeping on a public sidewalk and things like that. It was overturned by the courts recently, last year, 2019, which is why all these arrests level, because the main targets are by race and poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, SaKinah. I appreciate you. Does anybody have any quick final comments that they would like to share? Okay.
No new jail.
All right, thank you. So, by state standards, Broward County has the highest rate of wrongful convictions on death row, one of the highest rates of incarceration per capita, one of the lowest rates of convictions at trial, the highest rate of direct filing of youth offenders, highly disproportionate arrests, prosecution, and sentencing of Black and brown people, as well as unrealistic and crippling economic demands that impoverish our citizens and cripple entire communities. This is an indictment of Broward's entire criminal justice system, a system in which many of you have been complicit for many years. For some who lack any other professional frame of reference, it's the only system you know. Our community is demanding change, real change, in every department at every level. So why should we consider voting for any candidate who's been enabling the system of injustice for so long?
Let's start with Ms. Sarahnell. Your only experience is in the criminal justice system has been with the Broward State Attorney's Office under Mike Satz, producing the results that Jamie just described. How can you expect to make meaningful changes in the criminal justice system if you have never been part of a system that is just?
Well, that's not exactly true, that that's the only part of the criminal justice system I participated in. As I said, when we opened Mona Lisa, I was a felony probation officer like you. And that gave me a direct insight into the impact that this system has, particularly on Black and brown people, because I supervised them. I was there, I knew their families, I saw what happened with them. And you know what? It's one thing to say, yes, okay, I've worked as an assistant state attorney for 24 years, so therefore discount me. But what am I supposed to do? I don't disagree with all the parts of this system, and I see the problems. I've been an implement of change and an architect for change my entire career within the parts of that office that I had control over. I'll give you some examples. Probably one of my favorite assignments was as the chief of our domestic violence unit. When I went there and I realized the office has never had a diversionary program there, it was never allowed. Right at that same time frame, I noticed that batterers had a new tool in that arsenal, and that was immigration. So not only did they put that control, isolation, financially, socially, on their victims, they then said, sure, go on down to the state attorney's office and cooperate. They're going to call ICE on you. And it broke my heart. I couldn't get services to these families. I fought and fought for this program. And I was told that if I could get the stakeholders on board, I could start the program. And that was no easy task. I had to get the Broward Domestic Violence Council, the judge who presided over those types of cases, everyone on board with the program. And you know what? I did it. And I started the program so that those women who were deathly afraid, forget of me, just of coming to the courthouse, didn't have to anymore. And I could get services to those batterers, a batterers intervention program. Look, where I am now, I already talked about civil citation. It's not working. I went to the administration.
Thank you, Sarahnell.
You're welcome. I got a long list if you have more time.
Oh, definitely. We're gonna get into some combos. Okay, so let's see. Al.
Okay. the reason why we are here tonight, the majority of us are here tonight, we want to bring that change. Mostly everybody that are here tonight is seeking office for the very first time. That's because we want to see change. It's time to move out the ones that are there that haven't been doing anything. Now, we've been part of the system, that's true, but we was in a position that we was only workers. We had titles, but we didn't have the power to make those changes because there was people above us. But if we are elected, there is no excuse. The change is upon us. The buck stops with us. We take responsibility, you know, for everything else then. Now, some of the things that I'd like to see change is, again, civil citations, adult civil citations instead of arrests, if it has to go that route. People are being held in our Broward County jails because they can't get out for $50, $25 bond, $100. They should be able to be released. They're losing their jobs. Number one, the ones that have jobs, because they can't afford a $25 bond. And in a country like ours today, in our county, and with what's going on, they should be able to get a notice to appear to show up for court. They're not going anywhere. They're not leaving the country. The crime they committed, they're not going to run away from it. Where are they going to go? You know, most of them don't even have places to stay.
Thank you, Al. I think one more generalized question is, what have you said or done publicly, and, because this one is really important to me, before your campaign, because we got a lot of people that come around during campaign time, to change the culture of the department you've been working in? Paul.
Well, I wasn't allowed to talk about it. I was a judge for 34 years. So anything that involved politics in the form of change, I was left out of that conversation. However, as an administrative judge, and even without being an administrative judge, I fought within the system with the stakeholders to try and make substantive change. These were programs that needed to be done. I agree, $25 holding somebody because they had an open can of beer is ridiculous. By the way, Sarahnell was a very good probation officer. She was my probation officer for a while. She's got cases in front of me. But this goes back to what I talked about before. We don't have individuals in the offices, well, those individuals that were the policymakers in these respective offices are leaving. This is the opportunity for people who want serious change to come together to make serious change. And it involves all the stakeholders, and it involves money. If you don't involve the county commission, the legislature, you're not going to get the programs you need. We don't have men's facilities. We don't have drug facilities. Many of these individuals need those programs as opposed to be in the Broward County Jail. The idea is to try, in this respect, those cases that really need to be tried. A lot of
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
I feel so bad cutting you off. You know, I was acting tough in the beginning. It just made
Try that in my courtroom.
Oh, Lord. SaKinah, what have you done publicly and before your campaign to bring attention to the inequities in our justice system, and what measures have you taken to affect change? Because I see you out there, girl. I see it.
Yeah, so
I can tell. You out there.
I'm out there. I'm out there and I'm in there.
Yeah.
But what I've been doing, what I've done is, as soon as I really awoke to how, the systems work, whether it is with criminal justice reform or any other issue, I've started talking about it. And I think that's the most important thing, because most of my friends and family and followers are not people in the political system, or not people in the criminal justice world. So they have no idea. So what I've done, and what I will continue to do, is be absolutely authentic, absolutely raw, and really break these issues down. I will never be I'm not afraid to step on any toes by saying what needs to be said. And I think that's very important, because people run for seats and they might care a little bit, but it all comes down to holding on to power. So what I have done is been out in the streets. I spent 2 hours one day a few weeks back after I finished volunteering in Overtown, working with the houseless population. I was just about to leave, and Angel called me and said, come help. And we stood for 2 hours on Facebook Live, yelling at the police as they were arresting a homeless man for being on the street. So they felt it and people saw it. We need to start bringing these issues to light, humanizing these people and breaking down and saying, we're not going to settle for this. We can't settle. We can't compromise. We don't compromise injustice. So that's what I'll do.
Appreciate you. That's a rebel right there. Rebel. I love it. Ms. Jamie, I give the floor to you, or does anyone have any comments? Because Al, you mentioned something about when you were in the system that you weren't able to speak. Was there anything that if you saw something wrong, did you speak up? Because I understand that when you're at a job like particularly me, I didn't get fired from the department. I left because of all the injustices that I saw, and I was just one of these big mouth people. So
No, what I'm saying.
was anybody in this panel anybody in this roundtable a big mouth when they were working or still working for the system? Because we always want to talk about, well, you know, what I did in the past, but then like sometimes we don't want to forgive others for what they did in the past. So why do we easily want to forgive candidates,
Right.
you know, that are running, that have been part of the system? Why should we forgive you when a system that doesn't forgive defendants after they have served their time? So I really want to know who are the rattlers and who really challenge the system. If anyone has any comments or questions on that.
From the first group, please.
From the
first group, yeah.
Mine?
Go ahead, Paul.
My normal comment when people in my courtroom complained about, well, the state attorney does this, the public defender does that, is that if I wanted to change their policies, I'd run for those offices. However, I met with the PDs, all the stakeholders over the entire course of my career. I would talk and talk and talk, but until you can get individuals who are willing to actually make change or willing to at least listen and try and move in that direction, you're never going to get anywhere. The power lies with the money and the stakeholders. As I said,
thank you, Paul.
Hey, Mona Lisa, you say who was a rattler? Who rattles the cage? Who pushed back against the establishment?
Right. 1 second, Willie, because Sarahnell is next. If that's all right. And then
Then we'll go to the second group.
and the second group, yes. Sarahnell.
So my issue is that, again, you have a choice. You can either say, look, I don't agree with everything, so I'm going to go. Or you can say, I don't agree with everything, but I'm going to try to do what I can do within my power, and that's what I've done. I've already talked about several of the things. I got a program that I'm getting ready to start August 1st that I'm super excited about that deals with driving offenses. We know people get arrested for DWLS, right, because they can't pay a ticket. And they can't pay a ticket because they got to pay their light bill, or they got to do whatever else. And then they go down, 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 their license stays suspended. We're starting a new program. Again, I went and I fought for this program to pull people out of collections. Actually, there's a statute that allows us to prevent, Paul, you and I should talk about this, the clerk's office from charging people beyond a 2% surcharge on what they're in collection for.
Thank you, Sarahnell.
She's right, by the way.
Right. Willie, we got to get into this combo. Willie.
Willie Jones, let's go. Where is he?
Here.
There you
Okay, you're asking who was a changer? Who pushed against status
Who
quo?
was a rattler? Who rattled?
All right.
In 1984, as a young police officer with the city of Fort Lauderdale, I sued them, I employed by them, and I was only 13 for racial discrimination. 2 years earlier, I was the founding president of the Fort Lauderdale Black Police Officers Association. I knew back then the system was flawed against Black and brown people. I knew then, but I was not afraid to step off the sideline and get into the fight. And I've been in the fight ever since then.
Thank you, Willie. Okay, now we got the second group. Let me see. Let's start with Josh.
Let's start with Josh. What are we starting on?
The question is, why should we be voting for the status quo? But go ahead.
I mean, I think I'm the embodiment of the non-status quo.
No, actually, you're endorsed by all the status quo and funded.
Okay, but you could say that I'm endorsed by all the status quo, but at the end of the day, Jamie, I'm a career-long criminal defense attorney. I'm the only person in the race that has never been a prosecutor. I'm the definition of an outsider looking in.
Except,
let me just engage on this because I've been criticized. You have elected.
It's not a criticism.
No, not by you, by other people have criticized me because you have elected official support. You've raised a lot of money. I mean, both of those things are true, but those things are true because of the work I've done as a municipal official. It's not handouts and pandering. So I'm not going to turn down support and I'm not going to turn it down. But if you're talking about the institution of what's going on as the status quo of a race-based criminal system the deck is inherently stacked with people of color and minorities, if you're talking about over-sentencing and wrongful convictions, I have been fighting against that for 15 years. That's my life's work. So I am the outsider. Now, you want to call me an insider, and I don't say that in a insulting way. I'm fine with that. I have to embrace, but here's the difference. We need somebody that has the ability to bring everyone to the table and move forward in a different way. So maybe I'm like the wolf in sheep's clothing. Maybe I'm the guy that is an outsider, but also has the ability to bring people together. Maybe I'm the exact person we need that we should get behind and support.
Let me just bring up a point, is that generally change doesn't come from the top down. It always comes from the bottom up. The people in power want to stay in power, and they're generally going to put the support in to keep those means and keep their power. So if the people in power are all supporting a certain candidate, which in this case would be you for state attorney, why would we assume that they're supporting you for change? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Well, you're making yourself clear because I think but I can't contest that. I'm not going to, say that people are, I have to own the support. But at the end of the day, I have a vision of what criminal justice should look like. And if anyone wants to get to know me, the real me and what I really stand for, listen, I get along with everybody in this race. I have a different vision. And I think very candidly, there's only a couple people in this state attorney's race, of this 10 people race, that will actually facilitate change, will actually get the job done, and will actually bring real leadership.
Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mona Lisa.
Okay, Al, what have you said or done publicly?
Number one, I volunteer throughout Broward.
And also I'm sorry to cut you off. One main thing before your campaign, right? We want to talk about things that you have done before your campaign to help the community, to change the culture of the department that you were working in or have been working in, and did it work?
Well, I served on the served on the Criminal Justice Board, the Juvenile, Criminal Justice Board, for the 17th Circuit. I also started 2 Explore divisions. Those was the junior cop program I never had before in the city of West Park and in the city of Dania Beach. That was something that was a passion of mine, because these kids was lacking that type of environment. We're looking for future police officers, but we're not going to the communities, and start with the 14 to 15-year-olds, and bringing them into that type of environment. And also the junior firefighters program. That's a passion of mine. I also was heavily involved, with the PAL programs and the Boys and Girls Club. These are all passionate things for me to help these kids. I also volunteer throughout the community in different community organizations, and I also serve on the boards. I'm on the board of director for the Children Training Center. So I'm always volunteering, trying to do something to get to the next level, to help the kids.
Thank you, Al. Jennifer? What have you said or done publicly and before your campaign to bring attention to the inequities in our justice system, and what measures have you taken to affect change?
So right out of law school, I was doing criminal defense in San Antonio, which there's no PD's office there. So all these things are point. But, and I did a lot of pro bono work in what we call Jane Roe cases, which were girls that were seeking judicial bypass from parental consent for abortions, and things like family law cases where I would help a 15-year-old get a divorce that her mother had consented to the marriage in the first place. And just everything that I could think of doing post law school in terms of serving and putting it out there and trying to be on the best side that I could be to counterbalance the inequity that I saw. So essentially, I was just in this system for so long, watching how it worked and doing everything I can to counterbalance it on the other side. Then since moving to Florida, I was not doing criminal work, I was doing civil litigation. So I arguably not much in that regard. I do a lot of service in the community. I do things like serve on the Juvenile Justice Committee for the League of Women Voters, attend statewide meetings regarding basically the horrid policies in the state of Florida regarding juvenile justice. We have the most direct files, that we have the most for-profit prisons. We have the biggest motivation to incarcerate more and more people and younger ages. So involvement in juvenile justice committee work and doing things that quite frankly, just really giving a voice to all of these issues and making sure that people understand even what direct file means. So that's basically me on a local level. I'm finished.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sheila?
Yes. So before I even was running, like I mentioned, I was at the public defender's office my last year for 1 year. While I was there, I kind of saw how the system worked and how we were being targeted and how hard public servants were being pushed to try and use scraps to defend everyone. And I felt like I wasn't going to make the change I needed to make there. And that's when I actually went into more healthcare regulation, because I saw a lot of people needed mental health assistance, which they were not getting. And so I started fighting and lobbying to make sure we can get some of that money in. Now, the lobbying we were doing is really advocacy, because we didn't get paid to go to DC. You pay your own ticket, you go over there, you make your appointments, and you're like, listen, we need help in our community. As far as should we actually support the status quo? No. I've been a healthcare executive for 10 years, and I can tell you the first time I came into an organization, they wanted me to come in to make change. And I left some of the people who were with the last administration, and they fought me because they did not want change. They wanted the same system. So as far as this going forward in criminal justice, we cannot keep anyone who is implicit. They enjoy the system, they like how it runs, and they feel like it works better to their standard. And so have I ever spoken up? I've been speaking up since for a very long time. And one of the things that I decided to do was run against an incumbent who pretty much shaped this institution that we have now. Everyone who's running looks for his approval, so they continue to perpetuate this system of corruption and perpetuate the system of inequality. And that's something I was never about. And when I run, people are like, oh, they want the blessing, but I don't need the blessing. I have the people behind me, and this is what we're going to do to make sure everyone is heard and we have equality and change is coming.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. Sorry, Mona Lisa.
No apologies. We definitely appreciate everything that everyone has done. Jamie?
Yeah, did anybody want to add a comment to this? I mean, has everybody had a chance to speak?
Yes, I wanted to make a comment.
I think everybody's. Go ahead, Sheila.
I want to make one last, sorry, Carolina, no?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to make a comment because, I am running against the system for this congressional seat. And out of all the candidates who I did speak to who actually was interested in change, it was Josh Rydell. So I just wanted to, say that and not let Josh take all these punches, because he did have a conversation with me and said, 110% we need change. I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, Willie.
Got your back, Sheila.
Go ahead, Willie.
The question was, what have you done? I'm an author or co-author of 3 programs that were put into middle schools that address African-American youth and with diversity issues, decision-making. I also wrote a program that helped Black males in their parenting skills, how to interact with social services programs. They were done directly in the community. I belong to several, the NAACP, the National Organization of Colored Women for Benefits. But also use my resources to help people that were hurt.
Thank you, Willie.
And furniture.
Thank
Okay.
you. Anybody else? We're good? Okay.
All right, we'll go on to the next question. Oh, who's
Sorry.
me?
Go ahead.
This is a general statement, but when we're talking about status quo, the status quo right now is accepting money and support from organizations that go against your beliefs. So, you know, if I'm fighting for climate change, I won't take money from cruise lines. If I'm fighting for prison reform, I won't take money from the GEO group. That's just a general statement. It's not directed at you, Rydell. I don't know enough about your endorsements that you've received, but part of ending the status quo is to not take support from groups and people that go against our agendas. That's
Okay,
the status quo
can
right
I
now.
respond to that,
It's about
Jamie?
rules, about
Please do.
politics, and
Let her finish.
Listen, and again, I don't know you, you know, and I'm not going to say that. But listen,
It wasn't
politics,
directed at you.
regrettably.
I said that. I don't even know what endorsements you have.
No.
It's a general statement. My opponent takes money
here's
from
a problem
health insurance
that
and everything.
Here's a problem with the system. I just want to say this. Here's a problem with the system we've self-created. The problem with the system that we've self-created is that it's a money-based campaign system. I could disagree with it all day. You want to talk to my wife? My wife is disgusted at how politics happen. But the reality is, and listen, you have 2 state attorney candidates on here right now, and between me and Sarahnell, we have the most money. Every other candidate may take shots at us for that. But it's the problem is, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, I'm not beholden to anybody. When I ran in Coconut Creek the first time, lawyers that did business in the city gave me money. I wasn't the guy that was supposed to win. But guess what? When their items came up before me, I was the no vote. So
Thank you, Josh.
We got it.
Can I say one last thing?
Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead.
We talk about people when they're in power, all they want to do is keep in power. I came out of retirement to run against an incumbent because that incumbent is not doing the job that needs to be done. That's why change needs to be done. And when you get people who have that foresight, that vision, and they're willing to work together, and I know every single person that's running, most of them have tried cases with me. I think that's one of the ways you start dealing with the systemic difficulties and problems in the system.
Thank you, Paul.
I stopped before you said that.
Okay, I think Sarahnell raised her hand, and then we're going to go to the next question. Go ahead, Sarahnell.
Go ahead. You're on mute.
I know, and actually, all I was going to say is, again, and I think that, you know, you can do your own analysis. I mean, you know, political endorsements are what they are. I don't have any, you know, but you know, so that's how that goes. And raising of money is raising of money, and I agree that the candidates, you know, people contribute if they believe in you, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you have to get to know, I think, the person a little bit, and just as it's unfair to anybody to paint with a broad brush and say, because you've been working within the system and trying to affect change, we're going to tune you out because you've been a part of it.
Thank you, Sarahnell.
We got it. Thank you, Sarahnell. Okay, we're going to go on to question number 3. I'll introduce it, and then Mona Lisa will take it from there. Okay, so counties around the country have been exploring alternatives to traditional systems of punishment, incarceration, and rehabilitation. One alternative is restorative justice, which views crime as more than breaking the law. It also causes harm to people, relationships, and the community. In restorative justice, a just response requires repairing that harm as well as addressing the wrongdoing. The best way to determine how to do that is to have all the parties involved decide together. And this can cause fundamental transformations in people, relationships, and communities. Mona Lisa?
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate you. Okay, so the question is, what are your thoughts about this process? Do you support alternatives like this in order to promote community healing without incurring jail time or financial punishment? I think some of you are going to get, okay, beautiful. To the break room.
Jen and SaKinah. Got it.
Okay. So we will start with our candidates for Congress. Let's start with Sheila.
Yes, I definitely believe in restorative justice programs and expanding it even further, because there's some crimes that are not to that level, and we see that you know, in putting people in jail does not solve the problem that we're having. Once we start having more lucrative or more expansive ways of dealing with society problems in society, and punishment. We're starting to see that people are different and need to have the right in how they choose to. Families need to have the right in how they come to agreements. So I definitely believe that it's imperative that we have it and we start looking at our justice system not in one lens of punishment for the longest amount of time. And when you come out, you're kind of left on your own. Because remember, these are our children, these are our parents, these are our family members. And a lot of them have issues and are brought to this place, not because they knew any better. So we have to give everybody that opportunity to go forward. And as a person in Congress, as your Congresswoman, what I'm seeking to make sure, like we talked about, that second step that they're trying to pass, a lot of people are trying to push it to the sideline. We need to make it upfront and personal. So that second step for criminal justice reform has to happen in January. That's one of the priorities that we have to put forward. And not only because people are protesting, but because it's right. We're spending so much money. We're supporting private prisons. This is so for profit and not for people. So if we want to have a better future for everyone, where people aren't fighting and aren't feeling like they're cemented into being poor and cemented into being in this cycle, we have to change how we're doing and make it people-centered.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Willie, you are next. What are your thoughts about restorative justice, and do you support alternatives like this?
The answer is yes. In one of my previous answers, I was talking about the broken window syndrome, and that's 20th century. We need to move away from that. See, because police officers and agencies are measured by quantitative measures. How many tickets, how many calls, how many arrests, not qualitative. We must stop that process. And the only way we're going to stop that process is by changing the process. We need to put money into areas that's going to best work with the community. 5% of our society, as they tell me, commit crimes. We take 95% of our monies to fight that 5%. I say let's take that 95% of that money and start looking at the community programs, start looking at the schools, start looking at other alternatives so we can get in front of arresting the kids, introducing them into the criminal justice system. And the only way we can do that is by moving that money there. And I think one of the biggest hindrances is who is supporting, especially in my race. When the union support candidates in my race, that's status quo to me.
It's a problem.
So we need to change that. And that's the reason why I push back, they push back from me, and I welcome that, because there will be a new order of business when I become the sheriff.
Thank you, Willie. Josh?
Okay.
I mean, you spoke on it already too, so.
This is something really important to me, and let's get historical, okay? Restorative justice has actually existed in Broward County since the early 2000s in a sub-entity of the Sheriff's Department. The problem is through the sheriffs, the different sheriffs that come and go, it gets cut with funding, and then it gets re-grant funding, and then it gets cut. We're currently in a grant program for like Harmony, for example, and some of these amazing restorative justice programs that currently exist in Broward County. I'm talking fast to get it all out, okay? So we have to rely on the Children's Service Council and through their grant program to utilize prongs of CPIS and other things for restorative justice. Restorative justice is the way of the future. We cannot use it just through grant funding locally. It needs to be mainstream. It needs to be for adults. It needs to be for returning citizens. It needs to be victim-based and victim-oriented. This is a key component of a new administration that it needs to utilize. I have studied restorative justice components, and it is the exception right now, not the rule. We need to engage this in a very mainstream capacity. And the saddest thing, it's been here for almost 20 years. And we have some of the nationwide experts on restorative justice that I'm not going to name names, that they've sat down and met with me, not to be punished because this is recorded somewhere. But there's people I have met with in this that are brilliant, educated, and are nationally known for their work in restorative justice. And we have the ability right now with the right team to make restorative justice mainstream. And the other thing that we could do as the state attorney's office is a component of criminal mediations. We actually had a judge that went and educated herself on components of what criminal mediations are, and that is forward-thinking justice as well. But again, I usually am so limited with time, I can't talk in depth about these things. But again, open book, Jamie and Mona Lisa. I'd love to continue the conversation with either of you on these two important principles, and Carolina, these important principles that we must inject in our system.
Thank you, Josh.
Mona Lisa.
Paul,
Oh.
I gotta let Paul speak. You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, I just realized that when your sign came up. Restorative justice, coming from an individual who has sat on the bench for 34 years doing criminal work, and in my last 20 years, basically doing just hardcore criminals.
Rock court.
Rock hard. In fact, I started rock court as the administrative judge. I've started lots of them, but that's neither here or there. I had looked into doing mediation in criminal, but the only thing that they have is you can be a senior judge. They do not have any system for criminal mediation. I think that is a fantastic idea, and it's an idea who's come. But again, the only way to do that is through the entire system. We need diversionary programs even more so than have been stated. There is a program for suspended licenses. You know, you get 3 or 4 suspended licenses and you're going to prison. You're not going to jail. And when we send people to jail, all we do is we make them better criminals because they go in there, even though it's a non-violent crime, but they're in there with people who commit violent crimes. And that doesn't really help. The more we speak together, the more we can find the avenues in which to move forward. I'm going to stop before you stop me. And
Thank you, Paul.
Wait, let me finish my last sentence.
Go ahead.
Move forward and get us in a position where we can find all these resources and go to this type of a system, because ours doesn't work.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. Willie, did you have something you wanted to say real quick?
Yeah, I want to add it. You know, we're talking about bringing all the stakeholders together. And normally when we make mention of that, we talk about people that hold office, CEOs, and hold titles. What we need to do when we bring all the stakeholders together, we need organizations such as the ones you belong to and you, Jamie. We need to bring everybody to the table. When everybody's there, their voice is heard, they're respected, their input is respected. I don't mean getting together once a month and have donuts and coffee with the sheriff or the leaders. I mean coming in there and having a real say-so in how we change from the old to the new. And
Thank you, Willie.
Can I make a comment on this?
Okay, yeah, really quick. I'll let you speak, but I wanted to say something before, because Willie's on this. I'm gonna piggyback on him. When you talk about bringing people to the table, right? One of the things that I think about is like bringing the actual community leaders, bringing in the Nation of Islam, bringing in, you know, the street leaders, bringing in people that are actually doing work in the community. For example, the Nation of Islam comes in, does conflict resolution. They do, they teach law. They teach parenting skills. They actually sit down with the, you know, and let's keep it real. Like, we want relatability. A black and brown boy doesn't want to be, you know, they don't want to deal with white folks coming into the neighborhood. They want people that look like them. So is that something that personally any of you are interested in or thinking about? Because we need the street leaders out here. We need people that understand our communities. Sheila, go ahead, and then Josh.
So one of the biggest things that we need in reforming the criminal justice system is to make sure that we're having some kind of community policing and community corporation into the process, because that's where we're getting lost. That's where the system keeps on bubbling up and never moving anything. But I think most importantly, because when I look at our community leaders, everybody's doing a great job. The bottleneck is really coming from the people who are stopping the motion. So if we have to bring someone really to the table, it has to be the people we're electing and ask them, what are you doing? Because there's only so much we can do. I mean, I've been to so many of those Black Lives Matter. We've gone and sat there. I remember I met you the first time 2 years ago when we were sitting in during a program talking about regentrification. We are always there, but we need to hold them.
Thank you, Sheila. Josh.
So for the purpose of the table, need to be that invited are never invited. They're there. They just need to be invited there. And let me tell you this. Let me give you a unique example. In Orange County, this happened 2 years ago. You had a group of 9 juveniles that were breaking into cars in the rich neighborhood. All right. All these kids got arrested. Now, instead of being jammed in the system, let me tell you what happened. The state attorney went to the property appraiser, and the property appraiser, through CJIS graphiking, found out where all those 9 kids lived. And they realized all those kids lived within 2 blocks of each other. Let me finish this one story. Humor me here. They lived within 2 blocks of each other. So you know what they got? They went to the local faith-based church. They went to the county. They got basketball courts and a tennis court, repaved, and then they had a local church doing mentorship programs. What do you think happened to crime? We all know the answer to it. That's basic, simple innovation that we need to be doing.
Mona Lisa.
Thank you.
Mona Lisa, Sheila mentioned a word, community policing. Many of our leaders, they use it as a political nicety. Community policing is a methodology. It's it comes from within, and it has to go throughout the agency. It's not a political correctness. It's a word. I trained community policing. I did community policing, and it's more than just it's a philosophy, and it has to be built into all phases of law enforcement, not separate. It has to be a core value of the agency, so everybody understands it, and it's not a political expedient.
Can I?
Thank you.
Can I respond to that, Mona Lisa? What I meant by community policing, Congress has the ability to put teeth into community policing, right? We have the ability to make sure that it is a national standard. So we can no longer allow the word to be used without any teeth behind it and without us using the power of the pen. And that is what I'm committed to doing. So no longer the lip service that we're talking about and using these words, because if it's not written in, if there's no money behind it, then you have no intention of doing it. And so I totally believe in putting money behind it and actually using the pen to make that happen.
The best practice of the 21st century by Obama's task force is there. It's built into that strategy.
We need to move on to the next group.
Yeah.
Right.
One quick thing,
SaKinah,
please.
Towards the end, SaKinah, do you believe in restorative justice? You're on mute.
I guess you haven't been to my website. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I want to be very clear before I dive in. I believe we jails, condensed jails, but with the system we have it in the meantime. Some numbers. I know the Miami-Dade County Jail had 1 teacher. When you have more Black people in jail, but less access to education. You have more white people graduating with a high school degree. We also need to talk about, what do we even consider crime, first of all, before we can even get into that. If we start addressing poverty, crimes such as stealing and things like that will fall. I believe that we need to focus on rehabilitation. The goal should be to get up. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I believe we need to be focused on rehabilitation. It's actually on my website. I know it's such a broad idea that they're not just going to change all the jails. So I was hoping to get some grant money or some type of system to run it at one of the jails we currently have in Miami, where we completely revamp the programs to focus on rehabilitation like most other developed countries do, and prove it with the numbers when the recidivism lowers. So I'm absolutely for restorative justice. I think it's the only way to truly start to address our criminal justice system. But again, before we can even really do that, we have to start changing what we consider crime in the United States of America. And I believe that this is where federal policy needs to come in. It shouldn't depend what state or even what city you live in for which crimes you're going to be charged with and how long you're going to be punished for said crime. So that's what I'm going to say on that. Close the jails, focus on rehabilitation, educate people, give them jobs and housing.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Hi. So I am actually a big supporter of the concept of justice. I think it's incredibly important. And I just want, there's a lot of people that don't really understand what it is, because that's a term that we throw around. But what restorative justice really means is that it involves 3 parties. It's the perpetrator, the victim, and the community. And when you look at restorative justice, what you're doing is you're taking all three of those parties into consideration, so that your goal of corrections isn't strictly punitive. The goal is to make the community whole and to make the victim whole. And when you have that mentality, it's really an entire paradigm shift that we need to address. But when you look at things from that lens, then the goal isn't just to penalize. And that's just the nature of everything. And I really must say, just from what I've witnessed in my life in terms of, and we had talked about this, I brought it up in our breakout group, but when you look at things like capital punishment, and then you go and you look at what happens with victims after an execution, with the families of the victims after an execution. And I have yet to see anyone where they felt made whole by that punishment of the perpetrator. So, even things, and that's of course the most extreme level, but the point is that when we punish somebody, we're not doing it taking into consideration what will make the other parties whole. I mean, you might take into account a victim statement regarding sentencing. There are certain things, but in general, the purpose isn't to make the parties whole. So I'm a big believer in that. I'm done.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sarahnell?
All right, can you frame the question for me again? Because I think we were in the room and I'm not sure exactly.
What are your thoughts about the process of restorative justice? Do you support alternatives like this in order to promote community healing without incurring jail time or financial punishment?
The short answer is yes. And the programming that enables that to happen are programs like our diversion programs and like our specialized courts. But I think there are other things that we can be doing as far as bringing stakeholders together. I've been working on forging these community relationships for a long time. We have people in our business community who are willing to be second chance employers, who are willing to be mentors. I've spent my career in our school system. Whatever my assignment was in the office, when I was prosecuting DUI manslaughters, I went to the high schools at prom time and talked about the dangers of drug and alcohol. As the chief of domestic violence, I went in and spoke to students about what they can do if they're experiencing that in their homes. That's educational. I was most effective most recently going to Cypress Run Alternative School and talking to those children. Look, they go to high school behind a locked door because they've made some bad choices. But I was there to tell them that if they're clean between 18 and 21, they are automatically expunged. It doesn't have to be life altering for them. They can have a future. And seeing a prosecutor in a classroom makes a difference. I've been doing it my whole career. I cannot wait to bring it to the entire office and have a whole army of people who can be involved in education, because that's going to start the difference.
Thank you, Sarahnell. Al?
Yes, I believe in restorative justice. One of the things that I would do as sheriff is I will hire more civilian workers within the Broward County Jail so that we can have a more robust vacation program, that we can really get in depth with the people that come in there so that we can give them the services they need if they're going to remain with us, or whether or not, they get released, that we can give them those community programs that are out there. We can refer them, to those programs. I also work with the Broward School Board and hopefully Broward Community College, that while they are being housed at Broward County, that they can get their GED program and they can also start on some type of college level program. So upon their release, they can continue. I'd like to see vocational programs instituted within the Broward County Jail. Not everybody will go to college. We got to help people, so that we can cut back on that recidivism rate. Also, little, small, petty crimes, we need to start issuing civil citations. I believe in civil citations over arrest. And all that is saying is they get a citation, they come to court later, and the case will probably get, dismissed, or whatever the judge, decides, but arresting people again for petty offenses, misdemeanor narcotics in terms of marijuana, loitering and prowling, you on your way home, or just sitting in a car in a parking lot. All this stuff has to stop. We have to get back to.
Thank you, Al. So you mentioned community programs. Is anyone here interested in preventative programs? You know what I mean? Like preventative programs. So it's like I mentioned earlier, I believe some of you were in the breakout room. And again, I have to mention them because these are role model Black men, Nation of Islam. They come into the communities. They go in the middle of the night. They're going into our hoods. They're stopping conflict. They're teaching law. They have prison reform classes. When prison, like, they're already doing the work, right? And obviously it's an army nationwide. So why aren't
Lisa, what we have to do is we have to partnership. We got some of the best community programs in Broward County, but for some reason, they're in our communities. There are programs out there that we can refer people to in Broward County.
I understand that, but like, who are these people? Because constantly, you know, I still have a connection with the department and there's still no resources. Recently, I just spoke to a young lady that, like, she can't get any daycare, she can't get any housing, she can't get any help, she's on probation.
You're not gonna
like, what's going on?
You're probably not going to find it on the county level, but we have a lot of faith-based programs out there. We just have to tap into them.
Josh had his hand up real quick, and then I'll follow. Josh, go ahead.
There's a couple.
Paul, I got you too, Paul.
So,
my bad.
Lisa, you're right when you say where are they, because the reality is that they've been operating under the radar and underutilized. A perfect example is: does anyone on this panel, by a show of hands, and I know I'm not supposed to be asking questions, do any of you know what YATC is? The acronym YATC. Who knows what it is? YATC. Don't cut me off my time on this. YATC. Does anybody know what YATC is? Well, I'll tell you. JM Families, a large corporation, so SaKinah, don't hash me on this. YATC, the Youth Automotive Training Academy. It takes at-risk youth
in Deerfield
corporation that opens up a free training center to big brothers and big sisters in Deerfield Beach and take at-risk kids and teach them a trade. And guess what? Nobody knows about it. And there are so many programs like that throughout this county. Well, Willie, of course you do, that need to be made mainstream, that have saved kids' lives in a preventative capacity. There's a lot of them.
Paul, I gotta get to Paul real quick because Paul's been waiting. Paul, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, brother.
That's quite all right.
I forgot about Paul. My bad. Go ahead, Paul.
Story of my life. You know, I think all of us missed something that was said very, very early in the questioning. Change doesn't come from the top. Change comes from the bottom.
From the bottom.
Unless we are all willing to sit at the level where the crimes are happening, where the difficulties are, and I'm talking about taking all of us as a sheriff, as a state attorney, as any constitutional officer, going and having a conversation with those groups. If we don't know what the problems are, how are we going to structure a program to help them? And that's where it comes from. I mean, whoa, look at that.
Thank you, Paul.
Listen,
I'm in these streets. I can help with that. I know exactly what needs to be done. Okay, who's next? Jamie, can we go a little longer, or how's the timing looking, Carolina? Oh, Lord, there's a lot of hands. Jamie, talk to me, somebody. Lord.
Lisa, one of the issues is, especially in the sheriff's office.
Okay, so wait, real quick. Willie, Sheila, and Sarahnell, and SaKinah. How about that? Can we do it like that? Okay, Willie, Sheila, Sarahnell, and SaKinah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Willie, go ahead.
Within the sheriff's office, when they write grants, when they do requests for proposals, they set the bar so high to our community programs. Our community-based program cannot even compete. Although they say, I'm gonna bring you in and show you how to write the grant, but they don't show them how to attain the grant. So we need the sheriff, need to change the RFP process to be inclusive. So you ask, where are they? We can find them because we are funding them. You know, that's what we must do, is start giving them the money so they can actually deliver the services.
Thank you, Willie. Sheila.
One of the biggest things that I've been pushing is to make sure that the federal grants are actually going towards community members who are putting community-based programs in the community. A lot of money goes to people outside the community. They say they're coming in, they don't advertise it, and we can't allow that. So if you get money to help people in the community, it has to be streamlined, just like when you go to the doctor gives you all your options. If you're in the criminal justice system, if you are arrested, you should get a list of all your options. It needs to be simplified, it needs to be done now, and it needs to be readily available and advertised to everyone so people aren't getting that government money and living outside the district and pocketing it.
Thank you, Sheila. Sarahnell.
So partnerships are very important. And one of the partnerships that's going on right now is between the State Attorney's Office and the Florida Innocence Project for helping us to define this wrongful conviction or conviction integrity unit. You need someone who's going to be your state attorney in January who knows how to obtain free training from the Perelman Center at the University of Pennsylvania, who knows how to partnership and write these grants with the Innocence Project, who prioritizes this, and who knows how to go to the legislature and ask for more funding. Do you know that in the country there's only 60 of those units and 4 of them are in Florida and 1 of them is in Broward? So if it be heard that it's just done as, a political
Thank
flyer,
you, Sarahnell.
that couldn't be further from the truth.
SaKinah.
All right, 30 seconds. Preventative programs are called access to education, housing, and healthcare. From a youth perspective, I'm 25, grew up homeless for 5 years. We lived in homeless shelters. Any poor child is at risk. We have issues in my district, we don't have after-school programs, we don't have dance, we don't have art, we don't have psychologists in our schools. Major mental health issues. Our crime is kids killing kids. We have our foster care system. When you're 18, you're given a bag and put out onto the streets. These are the people that turn into the people that we then turn around and judge because they're addicted to drugs, living under the underpass in Overtown. Education, housing, healthcare.
Appreciate you. All righty, so this is good. All righty, so now we're gonna get this a bit more here. Okay. All right, so here we go. Even like looking at the question, I get triggered. So in the aftermath of the awful and inhumane murder of George Floyd, the movement for Black Lives Matter initiated conversation about defunding the police. This concept visualizes a system that invests more in community efforts and services rather than increasing police officials and the militarization of the forces. Do you support this? Please explain.
All right, so Jen, Josh, Sheila, and Willie go to the room.
Okay. Jen, Josh.
So Jen and Sheila, you gotta go. Oh, there you go.
And okay, so we have everyone here?
We're ready to go. Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna start this question with candidate for sheriff, Al.
Yes, first of all, I don't believe in defunding the police departments, but I do believe that we have enough money within our agencies that we can refer that money back to assist with community-based programs. Each year, the Broward Sheriff's Office return money back to Broward County. Sometimes it's in the double digits. I'm talking millions of dollars. I'm not talking hundreds of thousands. I'm talking about millions of dollars that we return each year. And I truly believe that we can take this money and reallocate it to help our community-based programs. Now, with that said, there is so much more that we can do, to help our community, more. That is, law enforcement should not be going to certain types of calls. I will streamline that by hiring more civilians. We don't need to go to accident calls. We don't need to go to calls that do not require
30 seconds.
And that's going to lead up to maybe a criminal arrest. We can have civilians handle that. That's a money savings right there. And we don't need to get involved in a lot of crimes. That's why I supported the Promise program and the citation program, because we don't need to get involved with these school kids for throwing paper and being arrested, for disorderly conduct, for acting out in school. And I think that's better.
Thank you, Al. Sarahnell?
So I think I prefer the word, rather than defund, I prefer the word rebuild.
Okay.
I'm not privy to the sheriff's budget and how they spend their money, nor would I control what they do with their money. I certainly think that rebuilding is necessary. I think that training needs to be a priority. I think that dialogue with the other stakeholders must be a priority. I think that the time of allowing a police officer to remain engaged and employed with 45, 55 complaints is unacceptable. I think that they know now that the public is watching and engaged, and I think that's going to make a difference. I look forward to making a difference in that to the extent I can within my power as your next state attorney. It's all about dialogue, and I welcome that.
Thank you, Sarahnell. Paul?
You know, this is a double-edged sword, and I kind of agree with what Sarahnell, the direction she was going. If you defund, then you leave potentially the public in danger. The money has to be used in such a way to create an atmosphere where on the street, they're not out there in riot gear, getting ready to, with automatic weapons and everything else, to put down protests. Protests, of course, have to be a little calmer in some cases. That's our absolute constitutional right. But the reallocation of those monies internally and what it can be used for the training, for community groupings, unless people get an understanding, they're not going to really understand what's happening. And as far as people, since George Floyd was murdered, and that's just the way I look at it, there have been other incidents, again, all caught on camera, and that doesn't seem to be changing. In every profession, we have good, we have okay, and bad. And until we find a way to eliminate the bad, we're always going to have that difficulty with police. But reallocating is the way to go. Defunding, I think, leaves the community potentially in jeopardy.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
SaKinah?
Hi, yeah. So this is what I meant earlier when people are too scared to call it what it is. Defund the police means that. It means taking away funding. We have a militarization problem in this country. We passed a $780 billion budget for war. The police don't need half of the equipment and gear that they have that goes unused. The next thing I will say is that it is completely possible to take that money, one, put it to more training. You have to go to school for 6 months, and it's just a military boot camp to be an officer. You have to go to school for 2 years to do hair. The police program should be much longer. There should be more retraining programs, as well as they should have study psychology and social service programs. The next thing I'll tell you is I'm going to keep taking this from a youth perspective. I went to a youth forum, a Black youth forum in Fort Lauderdale, in Broward, where I sat there with 20 young Black kids as they talked about how unsafe police student resource officers make them feel, about how they learn about all these issues with officers in their school because the background checks were not good, about how they watched the officers in their school get all these brand new police cars when, like I said, we don't have programs. And don't get me started on our cities in Liberty City and Overtown. When I'm out there working with the houseless population, there's so many police going by. Yeah, we just gotta call it what it is. Defunding the police doesn't mean firing all the officers. Yeah, we need to investigate every single officer right now and fire all the bad ones, but it just means reallocating funds. Call it what it is. Defund the police.
Thank you. We have a few minutes to, any of you have any burning, itching, anything? And also I have another question of my own, right? Like, because we always want to talk about, we want to keep the community safe, right?
But who is safe?
Right, so what's safe to me may not be safe to you. So I want to know, what does safe look like to you? I think Sarahnell raised her hand first. Go ahead.
I feel like this is a little bit like whoever hits the buzzer. Okay, So the reality is, safe should be the same definition for all of us. Look, I've been a prosecutor for 24 years. You ask my kids, they're going to tell you, look, she's the most overprotective woman on the planet. And I will wear that t-shirt, overprotective mom, that's fine. But look, in retrospect, and in watching what's going on, and throughout my career, I realize, and I've always known, I have spoken to my children about good touch, bad touch. I have spoken to my children dangers that a stranger presents. I have never had to speak to my children about being afraid of the police. And no person in Broward County or anywhere in the United States should have to have that dialogue. And we are all responsible to correct that. And again,
Thank you. All righty, welcome back. I'm missing them break rooms. I'm wondering what them conversations are looking like. So we'll start with candidate for Sheriff Willie, my apologies. How do you feel about the concept of defunding the police? Do you support it?
The simple answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe in that. Because with the $939 million that the sheriff's office has that I control, I know the county commissioners decide where it goes. The only thing I need to tell the county convention, it should go to those areas because those are the areas that are in most need in our county now. So with all that money, 930, we're 61 million away from $1 billion. Come on, does it take all that money? We don't need any more rifles. We don't need any more military vehicles. We don't need any more training to get that warrior mentality. We need to change how we do business. We need a new business model in law enforcement. That's what we need. And I make reference all the time to the 21st century best practices. The pillars: building trust, legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology, social media, community policing and crime reduction, officer training.
Okay, so the mainstream narrative of what we have tagged the moniker defund the police, of cutting police budgets and things of that nature, I don't support that. Do I support the reallocation of police budgets? The answer is yes. And let me explain what I mean by that. We've become a society that whenever there's an issue, we call 911. There's a cat in a tree, there's someone else, there's a domestic violence situation, there's an armed robber, there's a speeder down my street. We call the police for everything. That's an issue when we have too many expectations for our local police department. So it's something that we brought in a chief of police in Coconut Creek that has defined and embodied community policing. He's brought in non-sworn officers to deal with animal issues and to deal with homelessness issues, and to deal with domestic issues that are not militaristic style police showing up. So do we need to invest in training? Absolutely. Do we need to invest in better programming for police? Absolutely. Trauma training and things like that on a field that doesn't traditionally, embrace that? Absolutely. So do I believe we need to rethink? I believe we need to reallocate across the board how we're doing things in criminal justice and put more money and more resources to community-based programs that actually help. So I think that the moniker, again, defund the police, is not correct in how it sounds, but I agree with 100% with reallocating how we are spending our valuable resources.
Thank you, Josh. Sheila?
So I believe that we need to do three things. Now, as Josh mentioned, defunding gives the wrong connotation that, like that Trump commercial tells you, like if you call and the police aren't going to be there for you, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about reallocating funding, and we must reallocate funding to make sure it's going to community programs. But in addition, we have to start regulating police officers and police and law enforcement, and create a third body that actually is handling all the complaints coming in. What we've seen is that the police department needs to be treated like any other industry. Once you have a high level of abuse, a high level of systematic targeting a certain group, then the federal government has to step in and start doing some kind of investigative process. In healthcare, we go through regular checkups. If somebody's coming in and they're doing investigations, we have to do that for all of our police officers, all our law enforcement, and even our parole officers, because there's just so much abuse, especially when it comes to our community. We're at a point where we have to do this now and no longer keep shoveling to the side and get caught up in the semantics of it. Our people need help now. And in doing that, we have to make sure that some of these organizations, this protecting the boys in blue no matter what, this fraternal order that puts themselves before the people they serve, that allow them to abuse people and get away with it, and that silence other police officers who want to come out and report injustice, that has to come to an end. And on a federal level, we must demand that we can't turn a blind eye when we know that there's a code which silences them and encourages abuse, and that's a problem.
Thank you, Sheila. Jennifer or Jen?
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. I agree with Josh that the defunding narrative is just very misconstrued. It just lends itself to all sorts of misinterpretation. However, I do believe in taking a significant amount of funding from law enforcement, just like I believe in taking a significant amount of funding from the military-industrial complex. So on hand, yes, we have to completely demilitarize our law enforcement. These guys are geared up for battle when they're just going to a peaceful protest. So when all you have is a hammer, everything you're going to see is a nail. And I also think that with the militarization of our police, you have a certain type of mentality of somebody who wants to go get geared up and play G.I. Joe. So I think it's a combination of factors with that. But personally, I'd like to see our law enforcement officers spending their money instead of actually patrolling and policing everybody's minute actions and behaviors. I'd like to see that money go into solving the open crimes that just sit there languishing and for years on end. We have very few, there have less than a 20% solve rate. We have rape cases that are never even looked into, kits that aren't done. So to me, I think I would rather my law enforcement be solving serious crimes than policing and patrolling our communities. So when we say defund, I tell everybody, think of it like how we always treat education when we say we're defunding that. The schools are still there, we're just not prioritizing them. And that's basically how I think we need to address this idea of defunding. But yes, they need to have their funds cut.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Before I give it to Jamie really quick, I know that you want to save communities. I believe there's like two Americas, you feel me? Like that's just what I believe. There's on the west side of the tracks and on the east side of the tracks, right? So when we talk about, oh, we want safe communities, just real quick dialogue, what does safe look like to you? Because your safe doesn't look like my safe. And the next person that, you know, is in these positions, like, does your safe look like my safe? You know, I just want some dialogue on that. Like, let's have a little bit more conversation about like the realities of what the hell is really going on in this society. Anybody?
Me.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'll start with SaKinah and then Al.
Okay.
So it's an interesting question because we have all these police and I don't feel safe. As a woman, as a Black woman, I don't feel safe, whether it's because, you know, I'm a victim of excessive force myself, literally just 3 weeks ago. But then when you get into the jail, all the women in there are victims of domestic violence who are in there for fighting back instead of their abusers. So what does safety look like to me? I guess it's accountability. Accountability for abusers, accountability for whether they're partners, whether they're police. It's starting by holding people that do harm accountable. I don't care what your title is, what your job is, hold them accountable.
Thank you. Al?
I think
And then last person will be Willie and then we'll move on. Al?
all communities within Broward County should receive the same level of service. But however, I do believe that the Black community is over-policed. And I'm saying over-policed is, if we're gonna really have this conversation, is when there's time for media hype and we wanna show arrest, where do we go to? The Black community. And we have the media ride along with us and we showcase that we are doing our jobs, but we are doing sweeps. And we just arrested any and everybody for the 11 o'clock news. This is
Thank you, Al.
But we gotta be honest. We gotta have these honest talks, right?
Yeah.
But it goes on. And all that I hear from the Black community is they just want to be, they don't want any extra police officers. They just want to be treated the same type of policing we do everywhere. Like we do on the
Thank you, Al.
side.
Hey, Mona Lisa.
Willie, and then we're moving on. Go ahead, Willie.
Mona Lisa, I think I froze on
30 seconds.
I froze on the other answer. And I was talking about the best practices of the 21st century, the trust building, the legitimacy, the policy oversight, the technical social media, the community policing, crime reduction, officer training and education, and officer safety. This program, this document is well documented for us to make the changes. And yes, our community is over-policed and underserved. We need to change that immediately.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna-
I know you want to say, let me say one thing. When we say about safety, for me, it would be that there's no presumption of guilt with Black people, but I feel like we've heard all the African-American people speak. And when we talk about safety, it's really something that they use to fear monger other communities to feel like, you know, we're going to be out there doing stuff. So I would like to hear from the other candidates, because I know more safety feel like I'm going to be police, what their view is of safety.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Sarahnell and Josh.
Well, I think that Sheila might have been back in the other room when I addressed this issue, and my answer is very simple. Safety should look the same for everybody. And I briefly summarized that as a prosecutor, I've been cognizant for 24 years of the fact that, look, I'm an overprotective mom. I got a 7-year-old and 11-year-old. I've told them from day one about the dangers a stranger presents, and I've told them the difference between a good touch and a bad touch. But I very much recognize that I've never had to tell my children to be afraid of the police. And no parent should ever have to have that dialogue. So we're responsible, all of us, every stakeholder, no matter what your title or job, is responsible to ensure. I had a good friend who had a birthday party for her 6-year-old out in Coral Springs, and the Coral Springs Police Department, trying to do a good thing, came to this ride-by birthday that I was there. And you know what she did? When the police drove by, the little girl ran in her house. That's unacceptable.
Josh?
You know, when my kindergartner comes home from school and cries because I cry because she tells me a story about what a code red drill is, you know, that's not safety. When you see little kids running away from the police and not running towards them, it's not safety. It's not safety when our kids are unaware of ways they shouldn't be growing up. That's not safety. So do I think safety, I mean, it's a relative term. We all define things differently. But I can't even finish the thought because the sign. The reality is, Mona Lisa, is safety is a perception. The word itself is a perception that needs to be better defined, and we all have different perceptions of it. So, I mean, I'd like to go on, but I don't think I can.
Paul and then Jamie. We're going to Jamie because we'll be here all night. Paul, because I know you've been raising your hand a lot. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just like to wave my hand at you, Mona Lisa. When it comes to the issue of safety, and I agree, it's perception. I've always been taught that the police are your friends. I raised my kids the same way. But I will tell you an incident very quickly where my wife and I were on the turnpike. We got stopped because a trooper didn't kind of like something that I did that he caused. And unbeknownst to me, he had his gun out at his side the whole time because I told him that I had a firearm in my car because as a judge, I've gone through threats and I have it. And he didn't want to take the answer that, I'm sorry, I am not giving you my gun. You know, but let me just finish it.
Okay.
The moral of the story is, had I been black or brown, I would have been shot. And there was no question about it because he was one of those cowboys. And he was scary as hell. So I always tell people, just keep your hands on the steering wheel. Yes, sir, no, sir. But it's a mindset.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. Finally, Jamie.
Yeah,
I'm
so
loving this.
no, really, and we're sorry that we have to limit the time for the answers,
know.
but everybody's been really good, and I appreciate everybody working within this format. So let's move on to the next question, and it's on the same subject, sort of. So you'll be able to expand on your answers from the past. So these tragedies involving that harassment, torture, and murder of Black and brown people by police all around the country show no signs of abating. Every day we see new and more disturbing videos of police with no regard for Black lives or human dignity. We see blind loyalty from the police unions and fellow officers, and a criminal justice system that routinely declines to hold these officers accountable. So Mona Lisa, what do you want to ask?
So I want to know, and this is like a straight shot, are you going to prosecute police officers and the ones who stand by them? Ms. Sarahnell,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
give you the honors.
Okay, so the short answer is yes. Nobody is above the law based on what they wear to work. A uniform doesn't give you any sort of privilege, and it shouldn't. And I think, sort of along the lines of examining, these races, you got to pick somebody who you believe can stand up to the police unions, because really, that's who controls that dialogue. We've had officers that didn't get terminated because of this arbitration, and I have their rights to due process too, and I'm not taking that away from them, but you need someone who will be vocal about that, and that certain things and certain actions are unacceptable. I don't care what you're wearing to work. If you commit a crime in Broward County, you'll be prosecuted for it.
Thank you. Al?
If you cross that line, you should be prosecuted and fired, especially, depending on the type of crime that we've seen lately. I will not tolerate that. Number one, we're not even taught that in Broward County, to ever do a chokehold or put out in someone's neck. The rule states that we can only use enough force necessary to take a person into custody. And that force is to protect ourselves and to restrain a person, not to beat the hell out of them or beat them to death. That's not what it's about. And once we cross that threshold, that individual or those standing around not doing anything are just as guilty as the next person. I support the state attorneys in that effort that they should be prosecuted and dismissed. There's no place for that in our society today. And the reason why I see a change coming, I truly believe that a change is coming after the most current incidents has happened, because people are fed up and they're not going to take it anymore. So you will see some reforms coming and happening, because when we start holding everybody accountable like we're supposed to, and the world is seeing it because of body cameras and cell phones, things are changing. I see it every day, every week, from our elected officials holding chiefs of police accountable and other folks. So things are changing. Broward County is going to change. Our society is going to change. And the federal government is going to have a big role in it also, because they're going to take away your funding if you don't get it right.
Thank you, Al. Jennifer?
Yes, we will, Al. We will take away your funding when you're not cooperating with proper practices of law enforcement, as well we should. Not only do I think that officers involved in those types of infractions should be prosecuted, I think that all the officers standing around and watching should be prosecuted. And I still don't understand why we're not applying the felony murder rule. Maybe Sarahnell can talk to that, because I don't understand why somebody if the three white cops standing there watching the other cop kill someone, if those were Black people in a convenience store, I think that all three of those bystanders would be doing some serious more time than what's going to happen to these officers. So I think that the officers that are participating and being complicit need to be prosecuted as well. So to me, I don't care what badge you have. You do something like that, that's the end. Bye-bye. Those are our employees. They work for us. So we do not need to tolerate that kind of nonsense from our employees. They are insubordinate. And I don't care about their blue line and all of that nonsense. Those are our employees. And you need to be held accountable. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Jen. Sheila?
I believe that we need to have Congress create a task force, which is separate from police officers, public defenders, attorneys, state attorneys. And the reason why is because what we've seen going on is not just the officers that are complicit, but we also have the state attorney's office that is complicit. And so we have to actually look at what we have right now. We can't keep talking about the future, but we have a whole bunch of people who are still fighting and who can actually tell you that they suffered brutality at the hands of police officers and it was never brought to justice. So we have to create that task force right now and start investigating every single one of those crimes and holding everyone accountable. People cannot police themselves. So for us to ask the police officers to do it, for us to ask the state attorney's office to do it, no, I think we need an independent party because we've seen that it's not working. So if it's not working, I just can't prosecute the police officer. There's more people involved in this, and we all know that, so I don't think we need to pretend anymore. And so we need to start actually looking into it, for looking at everybody from the police officers to the state attorney's office to everyone who is doing a disservice and allowing brutality to be perpetuated in our community. We must be honest with ourselves. This is not the first time. This is historic. This is what has been done for a lot of years. So anybody who's in it, anybody who's been exposed has a taint on them. Let's start over. Let's start over now. And that's going to take us to have a task force that's set aside to deal with this completely and retrain. Even the state attorney's office needs to be retrained. Everybody there does. And even the police officers.
Thank you, Sheila. Oh, wow. Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Go ahead, Sarah, now.
I just want to say I've got no taint on me. I've never prosecuted a case that I don't believe in. And as to the contrary, when I have a case where I believe there's been police misconduct, even though that's not my division's prosecution, or I believe there's been a bad stop, that case has been dropped. Never put a witness on the stand I didn't believe in. I will teach that to the prosecutors. I do it now. So don't paint with a broad brush when it comes to the office. I'm an individual and my record stands for itself and apart.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, somehow I got back in.
Wait. Okay, they're coming back. Okay, hold on 1 second. They're coming back. Let me get my thoughts together.
We back.
We back.
We're back.
Never left.
I am dying to know what y'all over there in the back room talking about. Okay. Like for real. The juicy stuff. Okay, let's see. Who came back? Willie, Josh.
Start with Josh, then Willie.
Gotcha. Josh, will you prosecute the police officers?
And their bystanders.
And the bystanders, and the homeboys.
The answer is yes. I mean, anybody that does wrong is gonna get prosecuted. I mean, that's the definition of it. So there's not like a get out of jail free card that exists. So I mean, but I think we have never activated on that. You know, the current administration has not aggressively prosecuted misconduct across all walks of life. I'll say it not just for police, I'll say it for public officials. Listen, I get an OIG report every quarter that lists deficiencies on what elected officials in Broward County have done. That have been findings through the Broward Inspector General of people that have committed wrongdoings, and we traditionally don't see any prosecutions on those. So it's not just about, listen, regardless of anything, I have no problem prosecuting the bad actors. But you can't, listen, I have no problem saying yes to police, but it's everybody. You can't just single them out and say, I'm going to go after all cops. Because listen, there's a lot of good cops, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend there's not. But at the end of the day, I have no problem prosecuting anybody that breaks the law.
Thank you, Josh. Willie?
Yes.
Are you going to get rid of them cops?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
I answered that question in a previous answer. Yes, anybody that does not stand up to their constitutional oath, to what they're supposed to do, they do not need to be and will not be employed by the Broward Sheriff's Office.
And it's hot out.
Well, we need to move. Let's move along because we're getting down to the end here.
All righty, Paul?
Yes. See, now I can take an easy cop out and say, well, the clerk doesn't do any of that. But having been in the system for 34 years, I find that anyone that breaks the law, really, the state attorney's office has to look hard to determine whether or not there's a crime there and whether or not they can prosecute it and in good faith get a conviction. That should not stop. But there are multiple people in this system that need to be dealt with. And you have to look at the courage of those that are sitting in judgment, the judges, to determine how they feel. Most judges recuse themselves from cases involving cops because they don't want the backlash. And I will tell you, I have tried cases, and I have, on murder trials, I have granted directed verdicts, which effectively means they're gone, they're acquitted. I have taken a person that has been convicted of armed robbery because he had an incompetent lawyer, and I made sure I got him a lawyer immediately, and I got him out of prison. And he was the first person that ever received compensation from the compensation fund for wrongful conviction. So it's a matter of, can you stand up to do your job the way it's supposed to be done and outlined under the law? Willie said it, we are constitutional officers. We have an obligation.
Thank you, Paul. SaKinah?
Okay, real quick. We talk a lot about good cops versus bad cops, which is why we need to stop talking about that and talk about the policing as a whole and how it plays into the criminal justice system. Because cops don't just arrest, they also show up to testify in court. So it's bigger than if this person's a good person or bad person. We have to look at policing as a whole. Next thing I will say is, last night on our town hall, everyone wanted to talk about mental health, right? I don't have the power to prosecute, but I do have a big mouth. And when we're in office, not only will we be in the rallies, my office will be hosting the rallies, my office will be organizing these issues. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson is known for standing up to Trump over something he said that offended, that was very offensive. However, and everyone on the panel last night, all of my other opponents wanted to talk about mental health and how police, are necessary, but no one wanted to talk about Charles Kinsey. And when he was murdered, and when he was shot, sorry, not murdered, with his hands up, right? And Congresswoman Wilson actually thought it wasn't a big deal. She thought that the officer didn't need to be named. The next thing I'll say is Francois, he's a member of the Conscious Contractors. He was beaten by 8 police officers after a Heat game a few years ago, led by Officer Javier Ortiz, who is still on the force, who literally got up in front of the Miami Commission a few months ago and said he is a black man because he has that much complaints against him. So he's trying to say, well, I'm black, he's white Hispanic. He's trying to say I'm black, so I can't be racist. So will I prosecute? I can't. Will I be loud and make sure that these people are held accountable by the people who do? Yes.
Thank you so much. Ooh.
Great. Let's go ahead and let everybody have a couple minutes, and Josh, we'll go ahead and start with you since you reminded us. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I thought this was really productive and informative and rowdy and exciting. So, none of this is meant to offend anybody, but it's just to get our thoughts and feelings out on the table. So I really want to thank everybody for the patience. And Mona Lisa, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And Carolina and John, thank you
for having me.
All right. So let's go ahead.
It was great, getting to know people.
So we'll go ahead and let Josh get started, and then Sarahnell, because I imagine she's got the same form, and then we'll go back to alphabetical order after that. Okay, so go ahead.
You got it.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for putting this on. I got to tell you, I wrote it in the comments, and I think anyone who does a lot of these forums lately will agree this was an amazing concept. It was an amazing program and how you put it together. This defines how we need to move forward, whoever wins this race. I will tell you this, for a majority of the people that are in my race, I think you're going to get change, and I think you're going to get, there's a lot of good people, and I say this to this whole group, when you run for office, you expose yourself. You get shot and slapped and kicked and knocked down, and people write bad emails about you and blogs about you, but the reality is, it says something. So I give anyone credit who runs for office. Listen, we have a crossroads in Broward County. I've said it at a number of forums, and I'll say it again, in terms of how do we move forward. We have the ability to reform criminal justice. We have the ability to bring people to the table. We have the ability, for the first time in a long time, to stop trying to just punish crime, but also try to fix it. I've said things in this campaign. The first time someone sees a prosecutor, it shouldn't be in a courtroom. It should be in a classroom. There's components here that we have the ability to move forward. There's components of restorative justice. There's components of basic community involvement through nonprofits, through corporate partners, through faith-based institutions, that we could build a really big tent and bring people together in such a positive way. And I believe we are here in Broward County. We've lived in this war on drugs that has not worked. It's hurt people. We don't take care of the mentally ill that we need. We need to focus on really protecting our elderly, and we need to bolster our resources to that. Please finish. Listen, I'm an open book. You can reach out to me, my cell phone number, my email address. Let's continue the conversation. I hope to earn your vote. I'm Joshua Rydell for Broward County State Attorney, and don't let me just hop off now, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Sarahnell.
That was good timing. If you saw my eyes go, it's because my 7-year-old just ran in here and said, "How much longer?" Look, I want to thank you guys. Honestly, I agree. I will say I agree with Josh. I mean, this has been a great open dialogue. I appreciate it. It's been a unique forum, and I've enjoyed it. I'm going to tell you this. It takes much more to being a prosecutor than being a lawyer. And there's a lot of people in this race, in my race in particular, that might be great state attorneys in the future, but they just don't have the experience to bring the change that we need day one, and I do. My record speaks for itself. Go back, talk to anybody on either side, defense attorneys, judges, whomever. My door has always been open. I have always seen people and listened to them, and I will continue to do that. I think that in the changes that I've been able to bring consistently in the areas that I've worked, imagine if you unleash me on the whole office. Starting our first diversionary program in domestic to expanding it when it wasn't fair in county. I'm here for you. I'm listening. I welcome you to contact me with any other questions, and I truly do thank you for a unique and enjoyable forum tonight. Thank you very much.
See you later. All right, so we're going in alphabetical order, right? So we got Paul.
I'm there. This is not the first forum that I've participated in. And this one has to be one of the absolute best. It was very lively. If I had any criticism of it, is that we don't have longer in which to really discuss these issues.
No.
Change comes from those that are creative enough, willing, and have that, what do they call it, passion and fire in the belly to make sure that the change is coming good. You get change, you know leadership is coming from. In the office I'm running for particularly, the morale of those individuals within that office have gone from bad to worse to absolutely pitiful. And they walk on eggshells. And the bottom line is, I'm done?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you then for this very, very wonderful experience.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Sheila.
Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. Jamie, Carolina, and Mona Lisa, thank you so much for everybody who was on this panel. It was great. I just want to stress to everyone that we're at a pivotal point right now in our decade, and where we get to decide what we really believe, if it's really equality for all, if we believe in people, and if we're going to put people before money or money before people. So this primary is actually super important. Whether we're going to go forward with the 27 years of the same status quo, which money comes first, or we're going to invest those. So I ask everyone to please vote and come out, and also to please remember the change candidates who are here. We're fighting. It's a hard fight when you're fighting the institution, when you're fighting the machine, but we're out here every single day. And I actually got an email today from someone who actually made me cry, because she reminded me why we fight alone, why we fight in groups, why we're out here pushing and fighting against people who have more money than us, who have more power than us, who are threatening us every single day. And it's for change. The people are with us, and this time we will have change. And I thank everyone, especially you guys, for ushering the change that we're about to have. And it's Florida's time to be one of the change makers.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Willie.
Hi, Willie Jones, Sheriff, candidate for Sheriff of Broward County. We have heard all of the candidates, or most of the candidates. Now it's time for you, the public, to vote. But you're not voting for just the sheriff. You're voting for change. You're voting for someone who's bold enough to talk about change and usher in the needed change that this community needs. The two past administrations, there are people in this race that were in place of authority and opportunity to make this change. Unfortunately, it became a conversation after Mr. Floyd's death. This is not a political issue. This is a community safety issue. The people that could have made the change did not make the change. We got to vote for our future, our children's future. We got to start looking forward and not backwards. If people were in place, they should have made those changes. And then the question becomes, why now? If you didn't make them when you had the opportunity, why now? Remember, vote for Willie Jones, not for politics, not for money, not for special interest group, but for change. We will bring the needed change for equal justice and safety for everybody in this county. Willie Jones, 2020 for Sheriff of Broward County. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. SaKinah?
All right, awesome. Thank you. This was super wonderful. I would thank you all day, but I'm going to get to the point. We talked a lot about amazing criminal justice reform. We didn't talk about ICE. We need to abolish ICE. They're literally deporting college students now. They're raiding schools. They're breaking up families. That's what I'll say on that. About me, if you're wondering what I stand for, I strongly believe all of these things. I will not waver on them. But aside from policy, because policy is the bare minimum, I am committed to community engagement. And I need community engagement from me as your congresswoman when I'm not in DC. Congress is not in session right now. Although if I was also in Congress right now, I would have been fighting for us to stay in session because we're in a national pandemic. So more engagement from me, and political accessibility. So that means rearranging our system, automatic voter registration, national voter holiday. Our commission meetings shouldn't be at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when everyone has to be at work in a building you got to pay to park at. You got to have an ID to get into. And then empowerment through knowledge, because it doesn't matter how accessible politics are if the community doesn't understand how to use them and how to use it and how to bring that political power. So those are the 4 things I'm committed to. Without doing all of those, we will never, ever, ever change our system. Come make some signs with us tomorrow in Little Haiti. Check out my social media, SaKinahForCongress.com, Instagram, SaKinah for Congress. Thank you.
Beautiful. She has great energy. SaKinah, you have great energy. Jen?
So I'm going to just talk about, instead of getting into specific policy stuff, because really that could go on forever. So I'm Jen Perelman. I am running as a progressive in the 23rd district in Florida. I am challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the primary with the premise of an entire shift of the paradigm of the way we look at politics, the way we look at campaigning, and the way that we look at capitalism. And we need to remove the profit motive from our essential infrastructures. And once we do that, and the only way we can do that is by electing people who don't take profit money from corporations, who don't take money from for-profit corporations, special interests, or their lawyers, or their PACs, or any of their best friends. And we also need to elect people that don't see this as a career. I see this as a term of public service. My entire campaign is a service campaign to that regard. And that is something that I'm going to keep going, win or lose. So to the Gen Corps people that have been volunteering for us, we're going to be keeping your Gen Corps hats going, whether we win or lose. And really, it's just a matter of getting the money out and decide we want to have a society that works for everybody. And that includes a social safety net, and it includes taking the profit motives out. So Gen 2020, Gen FL 23 on Facebook and Twitter. And thank you guys. This was really fun, actually. I had a really good time. Thank you. And I don't get forums. So this was new to me. Nobody invites us. Nobody ever invites me to a forum. I'm sure that Willie and Al do them all the time, but nobody ever, they're pretending I don't exist. So thank you.
Make sure you get in there.
You are valuable, Jen. And finally, Al.
Right. Okay. Jamie and Mona Lisa, thank you so very much. I've been in forums all week. I have to say this is one of the best because you bring about each and every part of our system to communicate. Instead of us competing against each other, you bring in the brainstorm, with everybody. And that is so phenomenal. Broward County has a chance to make history this election year. Okay. All they have to do is go out with the old and bring in the new, whoever that may be, but bring in the new, okay? If we are talking about a criminal justice reform, we can change it. You got a new state attorney, clerk of the court, public defenders, sheriff of Broward County, on and on. But I just want to thank you all. And as you well know, to your listening audience, I'm running for sheriff of Broward County. I've got 40 years of experience. I'm a veteran. I've worked for the Broward Sheriff's Office. I started out in 1977 as a patrolman, and I retired out as a colonel. My wife retired as a major in law enforcement. I have 2 sons that are BSO deputies, so I have an interest in the Broward Sheriff's Office as well as the citizens of our county. So please, Come
Thank
November
you.
18th, vote out Pollack 2020. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Jamie?
All right, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody again, and keep coming back. We'll have another forum just like this next Friday, the 17th, and we'll have candidates from all offices as well as Congress, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again. Lisa, you've been awesome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing all your thoughts, and good luck to all of you.
You
Thank you,
rock,
guys.
you rock, Mo. You
Good
know
luck
it.
to everybody. Stay safe in this pandemic.
Carolina, say hi to the guinea pig.
Staying safe during a pandemic is a privilege.
That's the
Paul,
guinea pig.
yeah. Paul, thank you.
Oh, we got you. SaKinah's right on contact. Hey, you know, wait, I'm so sorry I didn't say this sooner, but the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Florida has formally endorsed Sheila, Cherfilus McCormick, who I guess, is she still here?
No.
And we're working on yours, SaKinah, at this point, and if everybody else can get their applications into the local level, we're gonna be finishing. Jen got the formal announcement too, that's right. All right, Jen, I'm sorry, Jen, of course. But that's coming from the state caucus, but the rest of the candidates here, please, I think you should have been mailed out your applications and get them back in within the next week, so we can take a look at them, okay?
Is that also for county, Jamie?
Yes?
'Cause I haven't seen or heard anything.
Carolina?
All locals should be applying directly to us.
All right, and you sent everybody's out, right?
Yeah, we need
Okay.
to send that.
If you haven't got your application, please reach out to me at the address that I've been communicating to you with, and we'll make sure you get another one. All right, and congratulations to Jen and Sheila. All right.